doing, we are taking note of a vehicle breakdown on the KJE towards PIE at Sungai Tengah Road exit. Also, it's heavy on Queensway towards AYE between Holland Road and Commonwealth Avenue. Drive safely.
If you see anything on the roads that we might have missed, you can share it with us via SMS or WhatsApp at 8855-0893. But please send the message through only when you are safely parked.
90 FM 89.3.
Budget discussion is brought to you by UOB. UOB, forging a sustainable future. For the better for ASEAN, for the better for all.
Money FM 89.3. Thanks for joining us on the Breakfast Huddle. Bharati Jagdish, Elliot Danker, and Ryan Huang with you.
All right, we've had a couple of days to digest all the announcements at Budget 2022. And today, to some extent, we're going to try and wrap up Budget 2022 with a good friend of ours, Alvin Liew, Senior Economist at UOB. Alvin, good morning. Tell me, this is your last budget obligation.
I certainly hope so, but no worries. If there's more to come, I will gladly still do it.
Yeah, you're an expert by now. I suppose let's start off by talking about how a lot of companies in recent months have given feedback about struggling with rising costs. There was a concern GST would be, raised too soon. Wages, another issue. Do you think, generally put, Budget 2022 has addressed a lot of issues for companies?
To be fair, I think if you look at the measures itself, on the balance, right, you'll feel that they were more targeted towards the individuals and especially to the lower income and the more vulnerable group, towards in terms of basically the inflation situation that we are seeing right now. There are measures for companies, but I think by and large you see that balance uh, more towards the individuals. And if you look at it on the measures for COVID-19, right, it's correctly targeted towards still at the industries that are still impacted by COVID-19, which is those in-person industries, travel related, retail. But broadly, if you look at the bigger picture itself, the measures, right, towards companies are more towards the medium and longer term areas.
And do you think this is a wise strategy to take at this point?
I I think if you look based on the GDP numbers that we saw that last year, right, it is a 7.6% growth. There are areas that are already thriving in the industry within the economy itself, but there we have to recognize there are still that are struggling with COVID-19 and still the fallout from the pandemic itself. So we move forward, right? We will have to we still need to refocus on at this juncture, right, on longer term goals, and those goals are very much related to things, of course, the green transition, making Singapore more competitive in a very much changing landscape. And we also know that the tax landscape globally is going to change. It's moving towards a certain direction, and we have to prepare the companies in that direction for it as well. Yeah.
Alvin, you were part of the roundtable discussion yesterday afternoon. Alongside you, of course, was Minister Indrani Raja. What were, for you, some of the biggest takeaways? Did you notice any hints perhaps being dropped?
Yeah, certainly we missed you though. We were hoping that you
Wish
were
I could
there.
be there.
Yes. But I think if I had to look at the comments itself from the minister, right, I think it's definitely there is a emphasis not just on the short term, which is what we have seen in the previous quite a few series of budgets because of COVID. Now looking more at the medium and longer term. And I think there's also there's a good explanation on the carbon tax itself, what they are doing for the step up approach. And I think it's everything ties in together with how we want to move Singapore forward in in face of climate change, in face of a digitalized world. And there is also the increase of the wages of minimum wages for certain um, occupations and sectors itself, right? And what that means to the social compact for how she describes it, that it's really there is the human aspect of the budget that still shows through if you look at all these measures. And of course, the tax structure itself, typically, people look at it, it's kind of, how would I put it? Yeah. it's quite inhumane, I guess.
Mm.
But then she made it more humane by how you see how they the government to bridge the inequality,
Okay.
to put the human inside that those measures itself. But of course, uh, there's I think there's also I would talk about there are the carrots that are given, but there are also the sticks involved
Yeah.
to push or to encourage people forward in the green industry. And again, I will come back to that carbon tax. That probably is that stick itself. And the carrots, as I would describe, right, some of the innovations that the research that they are encouraging firms to do with the centers of excellence here, and some of the areas that have been highlighted, I think including construction, right, is pretty much that stick in the flip side of it, where the carrot, the that's the carrot, and the flip side, the stick, right, is when the DRC for the construction sector has been lowered further. Yeah. Mm.
Alvin, did you make any inferences as to what might be in store in the coming years beyond the current budget?
I think one thing Minister Indrani did say that you shouldn't look at budget as you should look at budget as a journey. So if
Mm.
this was a journey, you should expect more measures to come in the various areas. And I'll look at it quite simply, like they put it in four focus, right? One is to increase the uh, I think capacity or capability, and those measures will come in terms of all those to help you innovate, digitalize. There is also about the social compact, so you got more help for the lower income, the vulnerable section, and also to help people to upskill. And there is also the green transition, which means
Mm.
that there will be more beyond this carbon tax. So there will be more measures coming out beyond the green bonds, or more details on the green bonds coming out. And of course, and we will look at the tax structure for fairer tax structure. And if this is a journey, then I will assume that it will get fairer.
Mm.
Hopefully fairer rather than roadblocks if it is a journey. We're going to dive into some of those topics that you talked about, Alvin. Let's start
Mm,
off with one area of discussion, which is around talent. You see tighter foreign labor policies, you see programs being rolled out, like the Singapore Global Executive Program. That's supposed to help companies with developing management talent. Before diving into those details, I picked up something from you yesterday during that roundtable discussion, and this was on the topic of support from mothers who are
mm.
talent as well, who, well, for lack of a better choice of words, provide and give birth to talent. Should we expect in future budgets a more focused approach on diversity,
Diversity.
which
Actually,
would
when I look
include
at
mothers, right?
yeah, yeah, definitely it will include mothers. And when we look at the economy, the social society itself, right? You
Yeah,
have like at least half of the makeup is the female population,
yeah,
and I mean and they play the added role of being mothers as well. And with that, that means, right, if you it's like we see that we should encourage, if we are facing a demographics which is the aging population, right, and we should be encouraging as much as possible, right, in various areas of the society to participate, to in a way to cushion the impact of a aging population. And that female population, the working mothers, right, would, I think, play a very critical role in both as nurturing the young, as well as contributing to the society. So that is area that we hope to see more measures. And I think yesterday through the round table itself, Minister Indrani did say that we would have things to look for. I
yeah,
think there's a white paper coming out at the end of the year. Then
yeah.
there's also on the population, some of the, so there would be measures. I think her words were that they probably thought that there were too many things going on in
Okay.
this budget paper to include, which I think we are quite hopeful that there will be more measures on that end. Yeah.
Clearly, we are facing a demand and supply situation, right? When it comes to talent, not
Mm.
enough skills, not enough labor for the right purposes. So, considering that we also have been discussing the foreign labor policies in an in depth fashion in the last few days, I would say, ever since those announcements were made. What do you think of what Ms. Indrani did bring up yesterday about how companies would just have to be more creative with the way they manage talent, but also their operations in order to be able to deal with the current situation?
I think in order to think about that portion, of course, one thing is on the price. If things were made too readily available, right, then firms won't think much of other alternatives. Then they will just go for the cheapest option. And that on the short run, right, that will be helpful for the bottom line, the profitability. But on the longer run, it need not necessarily be good for the company, because if this talent comes here so quickly, right, they can leave as quickly as well. So the idea is also, for I think at least I take away from Indarani's speech, was that for the companies to look closely at the Singaporean uh, employees, the hires itself, whether they may not have the necessary skills at this moment, but you can hire and you can do the training, and which the government has provided much support on those retraining and new skills upskilling programs. So those are things that the companies can take. Again, I will look at it as a very much like a carrot approach, as well as providing a stick to encourage you to go towards the right direction. And as I shared yesterday, I when we talked to some of our clients, especially, there was one client, a Singaporean, who brought up that he would want to see more talent coming out from the Singaporean pool, and to see more better jobs for Singaporeans, because it works in many ways. It's not just about being on the bottom line itself, but it also keeps the society going in the correct direction, and that
Mm,
is actually helps in the long run the bottom line for companies who are based in
yeah,
Singapore.
yeah. Make it glamorous and rewarding to hire Singaporeans even more if they're Singaporean
Yes,
mothers.
I think you will be a great spokesman for that.
I'm looking at my second career or third already. Okay, we'll continue our budget 2022 wrap up with Alvin Liew, senior economist at UOB. Your Money FM 89.3.
Budget discussion is brought to you by UOB. UOB, forging a sustainable future. For the better for ASEAN, for the better for all. The Breakfast Huddle with Elliot Danker, Bharati Jagdish, and finance presenter Ryan Huang. Only on Money FM 89.3. Traffic.
Let's take a look at how the roads are treating you this morning. A vehicle breakdown on the CTE towards SLE after Ang Mo Kio Avenue 5 exit. Please avoid lane 3 there. And it's heavy on the AYE towards Tuas at Pioneer Circus exit. Drive safely.
If you see anything on the roads that we might have missed, you can share it with us via SMS or WhatsApp at 8855-0893. But please send the message through only when you are safely parked. The news never stops, and neither do we. Money FM 89.3, Singapore's most influential radio station. Budget discussion is brought to you by UOB. UOB, forging a sustainable future. For the better for ASEAN, for the better for all.
Money FM 89.3. Thanks for joining us on the Breakfast Huddle. Now, it's been a few days since Budget 2022 was announced, and we've all had some time to digest the announcements. So now we're taking a look back at the various issues that were put forth and the way forward. Joining us now is Alvin Liew, senior economist at UOB, to help us out.
All right, Alvin, let's talk about help for other sectors. I tend to put aviation and tourism together, but this time around we see targeted help for aviation, not so much for tourism. Your thoughts on this?
I think the I would think that if you're right that they should become together,
Yeah.
but at the same time, right, the slow process of the reopening does affect both.
Okay.
I think that if we have continued on the path of those vouchers where you encourage domestic travel, right, domestic tourism related activities, that will be still helpful. But I think on the longer run, it may not be it may not be a sustainable outcome.
Okay.
So I think that's why you've seen less. But then I think the other ways of looking at it is those sectors, I think the employment, they still receive some of the targeted wage wage related kind of measures to help them offset. So I think that's how they moved along. Yeah,
Let's talk about the green transition, very much on the minds of a lot of businesses and, of course,
correct.
policymakers as well. We know that the carbon tax will be raised to $25 per ton of greenhouse gas emissions in 2024. This is up from $5 per ton currently. Moving forward, how do you think businesses will be able to adjust to this better and to also understand the spirit of this entire push in order to make it as successful as possible?
I think before this, right, I heard the previous guest that you had talking about a lot on energy. I think
Yeah.
I share a lot of those sentiments itself, and definitely, right, this is playing our role in this climate change, and we have to encourage the companies in a way to transform their practices, their operations in a way to make it more energy efficient. And carbon tax is just that one way. I think the important point again was emphasized by the earlier guest, which Minister Wong did say. The amount of money that carbon tax collected, right, is not going into the coffers of the government. Instead, the money will be used back to the industry to help them in the processes itself. So it's really pretty much trying to driving for more energy efficient, a more greener environment outcome for Singapore and for the world. Um, Companies will have to recognize that in this movement itself, right, the short term aspects when carbon tax increase, that means cost for some companies will increase, and in a way it will translate to higher prices downstream towards the intermediate users and towards the final consumers. So that would itself will be one of the impact from this, that prices are expected to go up, especially when you look at who are the people who are impacted on this carbon tax, right? The one off the top of the list will be those energy producers, the the power plants, things like that. Yeah. So and how that will translate downstream towards the end of consumer, then we see higher prices, and then we need to offset those prices. No, not offset those prices, but to help cushion the consumers on the higher inflation front. But there is also as which the guest earlier is, there is also this opportunity, right, whereby they also provide um, for companies to innovate and to transform their practices, their operations to make it more green. So it's not just about a stick. Again, it's
Yeah.
also there's a carrot there to help.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think the longer term idea is that you can't just use offsets. Yeah, because at the point, right, somebody is paying for it at some point, right? You're just buying, if you buy credits to make yourself look green, right? But somebody else is paying the price somewhere
Yeah.
else. So it needs a real change in order, a real transformative, like a green towards a greener path itself to make that
Mm.
difference. Yeah.
Mm. And I mean, based on that, you can already sort of visualize in your head the overlap between that and that push for digitalization as well, and how that's going to help. Alvin, I do have an opinion question for you though, and this is one for anyone who engages in water cooler talk. Is it fair to constantly compare our carbon taxes with the likes of other countries in Europe? I mean, economies of scale, how much is a small country like Singapore really contributing to it? I could cause trouble by asking that, but what are your thoughts?
Okay, definitely not like for like comparison. And given the long history, right? Uh, I mean, this argument has been put forth by a lot of developing countries, especially, right? But the Europeans have gone through 200 years or more of like industrialization or what have
Yeah.
you, and a lot of these countries, so they can't put things on par in that sense. Correct. Uh, I think that really is, as you say, a subjective and opinion opinion, but to to put it that we would still need to play our part in this role.
Okay.
We need not be going, and I think if we look at our levels, right, when the highest at where we are going towards is, I think, $80
Mm.
by 2030,
Yeah.
and some of the European countries have well exceeded that levels already. Whether they will go even higher, I remains to be seen. But I think the chances are the trajectory is upwards. Um, to I won't put us on the but on the same platform, but as it is quite also a, how do I put it? In a country as small as Iceland, right, for example,
Okay.
right, they have natural resources to tap on, right, for
Mm,
renewable sources.
mm.
We hardly can find a waterfall here in Singapore,
Mm,
unfortunately.
Not the Jerome Bird Park
So
one, huh?
we may have limited choices in terms of how we look for renewables. The earlier
Yep.
guest again, right? I think had a
yeah,
great about hydrogen, because
that's right.
we could technically, right, build a nuclear plant right underneath our
Sure.
HDB,
Yeah.
underneath the country, but
Yep.
that might not uh, be a very safe solution, or that might not be a very popular solution. So we may have to seek other forms options. And I think the previous guest, I think the hydrogen, sorry, seems to be a more plausible way, at least when I hear the arguments for us to go. But certainly we will have problems looking for uh, how do you say it, significant sources of
Sure.
renewable energy that is available to us in our current location.
Now, Alvin, beyond the carbon tax, of course, other taxes were talked about as well, more progressive taxes in
Mm.
order to make sure that our country is just more inclusive and overall the tax structure would be more sustainable. To what extent do you think the policies that were announced and the moves that were announced have actually succeeded in moving us in that direction successfully?
Successfully is a really quite
Mm.
a subjective term at current juncture, given that the budget was announced less than 5 days ago. But it's definitely, you feel that there's a move. Before the budget came out, right, our expectations were fairly low on wealth related taxes,
Mm,
Mm.
and we thought that GST would be the main item on the agenda on the tax front. We know that corporate tax will be talked about, but may not have a conclusion because they are still in the kind of study phase. But that's why we were quite surprised on the magnitude of the number of wealth-related tax changes that came about, and as well as the personal income tax on the higher brackets. Definitely, that looks at the direction of uh, trying to, as I think Minister Indrani puts it, right, redistribute from those who have more to those who have less, and then they will be also in a position, right, to contribute more in that sense to the society. um Definitely I think that's the direction, but I will feel that if, like, again, when we describe it as this is a journey, right, then there might be more coming up along the
mm,
way,
mm.
perhaps more targeted, more in tune, and less, because we have a lot of things that we are balancing in the basket right now
Yeah.
as well. We want to make the society fairer, more inclusive, but at the same time, we also want to be a wealth hub here, a wealth center, a financial center of excellence. So there are a lot of things that we need to measure, and we can't. And I believe that when we make the target of the wealth tax as towards property, right, and that has been a more clearer, and it's, as I think the KPMG, uh, my co-panelist RJ put it right, this is non-movable. So yeah, it's versus when you try to tax certain amount of wealth where it is
Yeah.
highly mobile, right? That
Yeah.
may actually move them to some other jurisdictions. But in this sense, I think it was quite uh, well intentioned, and it was quite well executed.
Mm. Alvin, just as a final question to wrap things up, you know, the post COVID mood for a lot of people, workers, businesses tends to be anxiety. Alvin, if you had an anxiety meter after budget announcements, where is it at? Was there anything missing?
Okay, anxiety meter was probably caused by the
I...
numbers I saw overnight.
okay.
Yeah, but I think we are moving to that stage. Every time we transition to something different, right, we tend to get some kind of anxious feeling.
Yeah.
I think the budget itself, to me, addresses quite a fair bit and of things. This delay of the GST from the expected this year of from the analyst point, right, to towards next year and on a staggered basis, right, certainly show that the, the, the price changes could be more cushioned in that sense.
Mm, mm,
And we also see that there was a top up onto the assurance scheme, assurance package, right, to provide even more to try to offset the GST. So those things, I think, from on the individual, for individuals, right, that's certainly very. I mean, I take comfort in that, as there's more measures put in place for that. For the companies, right, I think the medium and longer term is trying to put them back in the medium longer term focus. Companies that are still impacted by COVID, they have very targeted measures right at the start, but really we have to look beyond this. We would eventually get over this COVID. Yeah, but going through the endemic, right, the numbers are scary, I guess. But I think we should actually follow that train of thought, at least where the budget is giving us, right, that we are moving towards our more medium and longer term goals. And this is something that we can't be trapped by just everything is all COVID related, I think.
Yeah, certainly. And this is supposed to be us recovering from COVID-19, right? Thank you so
Yes,
much, Alvin. Alvin Liew, Senior Economist at
thank you.
UOB. You've been such a great and trusty guide since Friday. And I'm sure we'll continue talking to you about the specific issues that come up during the Committee of Supply debates as well. Thank you so much, Alvin. You stay safe
Thank
and
you
take
for
care,
having
yeah?
me. Yes.
Budget discussion is brought to you by UOB. UOB, forging a sustainable future. For the better for ASEAN, for the better for all. Budget discussion is brought to you by UOB. UOB, forging a sustainable future. For the better for ASEAN, for the better for all. You're with The Breakfast Huddle with Elliot Danker, Baradi